Hello and welcome to Up the Villa podcast. If you're new to our channel, subscribe. My aim for Christmas was to get us to 5k, but obviously the game was postponed, so I was a bit gutted about our lack of content. It feels like it has been a while, but please subscribe. It means the world to everybody that contributes to this channel as well. So we'll have a light target of 250. But from my point of view, I just want to say thanks everybody who's supported us this year, especially. The growth on the channel has been amazing. And I just hope that we've entertained you in whatever way that we possibly can. So thanks everybody. And I just want to say, I hope all the viewers and listeners have a really good Christmas. I know Christmas for some people isn't so great. So we'll try and bring you some festivity with our content over the Christmas period as well. So just want to wish all the viewers and the listeners a happy Christmas. Justin's very festive. Do you want to add anything?
No, just to echo what you said, really. It's been a pleasure doing it, with all you guys. And Ryan's obviously not here at the moment. But wish everyone a really happy Christmas. And thanks, everybody, for the support everybody's given the channel and us personally as well. It's been great. We enjoy doing it. It's something that we thrive off and we love doing. So it's a pleasure for us to do it. I just, glad everybody enjoys it as much as we do.
Yeah, as you can see, Hannah's got Ryan's top spot. So Ryan, he's in New York. If you're listening, you've got to fight for your place back now. We'll give you a few little warm up games, behind the scenes, and maybe you'll get your place back. But Burnley postponed, gutted. Such a shame that it was postponed for a lot of Villa fans. I saw on Twitter that one fan came from Singapore, someone from America. One thing that did annoy me a little bit though was that some Villa fans were going in on the club and blaming the club, and I just think, in my opinion, the club did nothing wrong. We spoke to the Premier League at 10 o'clock. We let them know what our position was, and they dilly-dallied until 12:45 to announce that the game was off. So for me, it was all on the Premier League. One man that I was gutted for was Kay on the screens. He was going to take his little lad for the first ever time. So I was gutted for you. And when I saw the news, I just thought, oh no. What were your thoughts, mate?
Well, just that, right? It's gutting. It was going to be my first time taking my boy to the Villa. I was with my dad as well. So it would have, 3 generations of Villa fans in the car going all the way up to Villa Park from London. And thank God we had TalkSport on because we didn't actually get the email to say it had been cancelled for about half an hour after the announcement on the radio. So the communication, I don't think, was the best for this situation. And there's me kind of feeling bad for the Spurs fans that made a trip to the Midlands the week before with 3 hours before kickoff. This announcement was even less time. And whilst I appreciate the club notified the Premier League at 10 o'clock, to be honest, I think they should have made a call the day before. They should have just made the call the day before. If they knew that there were PCR tests waiting for results, you just don't think it's going to happen to you until it happens to you. And then it's gutting, right? And I know that it's out of our control and it's out of everyone else's control to a degree. But to be honest, the fixtures were dropping like flies, weren't they? The whole weekend. So to be honest, I think they should have made a call the day before. That's my view on it, because I was on the receiving end of being, on the motorway, 1 hour away from Villa Park, travelling up from London. So it's gutting, but, it happens and it's been happening. So we've just got to adapt that the uncertainty of just not knowing if a game is going to be on or not is just part and parcel of life at the moment when it comes to football and many other things, unfortunately.
Yeah. To be fair, when I heard Gerrard's presser on that Friday, I got a bit of a vibe from him that there was a little bit of uncertainty with what he was saying as well. It was just really, really frustrating. But like you say, we had COVID issue on the Tuesday. We had a couple of cases on the Tuesday and we played. So, there was that uncertainty going to it as well. So, anyone else want to add anything on the Burnley?
I think it was a shame the way it happened. I think we don't want to go political, obviously, but I think the government have got to step in a bit quicker and make decisions a bit quicker. And I think the Premier League, like you said, Luke, I think they needed to be more reactive, much quicker. Sorry, I put a tweet out saying that the meltdown was on from fans, and what I meant was what you said. Really, was that they were all blaming the club, and I think the club's hands were tied. I think they can only act on what information they get in, and they're all testing. I think they're doing lateral flows every day, PCR tests 3 times a week now. So until those results come in, you can't call a game off. There's nothing there to allow you to call a game off until you've got results in. So they couldn't call the game off the day before. I think they had two COVID people out in the week, and then obviously they felt they had a big enough and good enough squad to play the Chelsea game the Burnley game up until the day of the game when they got all these results in. So it's a mess, isn't it? It's a real mess, and it's not going to get any better any quicker, unfortunately. So I think they've made a call today saying that all the games are going to go ahead. And it's a shame that it's happening, but we've all got to live with it in our day-to-day lives. So football, really, we all want football to carry on because it's such a help for everybody. It's this time of year, the games come thick and fast. It's very difficult. I just hope the integrity of the competition doesn't get knocked about, because if you are going to have teams that are going to be horrendously, weakened by having to play, anybody out of the first 11 and the under 21s now that are there counting as a squad, who knows what kind of team news we're going to get over the next 10 days, 2 weeks, a month's time. So it's a moving situation. I think it's going to be a lot more things are going to happen over the next 2 weeks as well.
Yeah, and I feel like this is probably the worst time it could possibly happen, because you've got that many games coming thick and fast. Can't remember who tweeted it, but I did see a tweet today saying that as long as you've got 14 players, you've got to use the youth team as well. So it does look like the stance from it now is if you've got 14 players, you're playing that fixture, which, like you say about the integrity, it depends what 14 you got available. Because I know, Chelsea wanted to postpone their game, but you looked at that starting lineup and it was heavily depleted against Wolves. It was still a pretty good starting 11. It's a lot better 11 than probably what a lot of Premier League clubs could probably field. So it does look like they've just decided that their little gem is just going to go, it's just going to carry on, and it's going to be played. So, yeah. Depends who's out, who's missing. And the other thing is it's not just the COVID players that are missing. It's also because there are so many games coming thick and fast. It's the rotation of players, isn't it? It's the risk of injury. We were looking at playing Norwich and then playing Burnley. Some of the players that played on Tuesday night against Norwich would have probably needed a little bit of a rest. But because you'd got COVID cases, there was going to be no rotation, was there? Which was another worry. So let's move on then. Let's just touch on a bit of COVID, because we've never ever mentioned COVID on this podcast before. But for me, I do feel like this is probably going to be the last game where you're going to have fans in the stadiums. You've seen Wales do it now. Scotland are playing behind closed doors. It's absolutely crap in it, but it looks like it's going that way. Hannah, do you see it going a different way, or do you feel like Sunday will be the last one that we're at?
Yeah, I think with the way things are going at the minute, obviously we're going off speculation and we don't know how things are going to look this time next week, but it's not looking great, is it? I think, like what you're just saying, we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, because we all want football so badly. We want it to get through this tough period, but this tough period is then having so many forced complications on the league. So we're now having to do a PCR test 24 hours before a game, which isn't great, because the minute you get 6 positive results, you're postponing a match 4 hours before. So from the league perspective, that it's just completely bonkers. And I think even though they've decided that they want to continue the fixtures, from a government perspective, next week we might see that those fixtures continue, but we can't be there. And it feels like the things we all love the most and things we enjoy the most seem to go the quickest. So I won't be surprised if it's the big gatherings like football games that go down the pan, which is just gutting, because again, we feel like we've come so far. We started the season and we thought, yes, we're back in the ground. We're not going to have to sacrifice this again. And then what, like 3-4 months down the line, potentially watching all the games on the TV again, which is it's just awful, isn't it? But again, we're speculating, so we'll have to see what happens next week. But yeah, with Chelsea at the weekend, if we have to field 14 players, and Chelsea have got to field 14 players, we're going to massively struggle, because if the COVID cases do continue, which they probably will, those players were in training last week together, the cases are going to spread. We're going to end up with a massively depleted squad. And at which point it's like, okay, the fans are now being kicked out of the stadiums, but the players are still going to play in a league that is suffering the exact same issue with COVID. So it's like, we've got to give it up, but the players have got to continue. They're human beings, the integrity of the game, everything. It's just such a mess. And that it gets to the point where you're so frustrated because, okay, we're going to not be able to attend games, but we can't even watch the best football because the league's compromised, because you've got so many players out, you've got so many injuries, you've got so many postponed. It's going to be teams with 5 games in hand. And at what point do you just feel like we need to pause and get things back on track? Because it does feel like that at some points, even though we don't want to give up football. It feels like a very messy, turbulent and confusing time at the minute. And I wouldn't be able to put any money on what way it will go next week. So we'll have to wait and see.
Just feels like there's been no plan. Do you know what I mean? Like there's been no plan for this, has there? Of any sorts. Kay, what's your vibe?
It's hard, isn't it? Just like Hannah said, it's very turbulent from one week to the next. My opinion, personally, is that if you have to do everything you can to try and keep these games on, because once you have a fixture pile up and you postpone, and then we've got so many other fixtures and games, it just ends up being a tailback of fixtures you're trying to shoehorn in, and then the league's going on until July.
And we've
then
got the issue of the World Cup next winter, exactly, where they can't afford to have it.
The Africa Cup of Nations in January. You've got all these Nation League, games, which is quite frankly the least of our priorities, really. Talking about having the South American teams join the Nations League and all this sort of stuff and expanding that. It's just ludicrous to even consider something like that when you've got domestic seasons up in the air, so to speak. And I think whilst it is difficult and it is turbulent and it is really, really hard to predict, I think the leagues need to do everything they can to try and keep these games going and try and get these fixtures going. Whilst the squads might be fairly depleted in some aspects, I think that's better than having a pile up and you're finishing the season in June or July. I mean, look at the effects of not having a proper pre-season has had on our squad, let alone other teams, right? You've got players that haven't been able to get into gear, like, Leon Bailey, for example. Players picking up injuries so early on into the season because they haven't been conditioned enough yet to start the domestic season. And I think that is another concern. Whilst we can think short term, pause it, cancel games, I think we also need to think about the medium to long term effects as well. And we need to take learnings from what happened last year. So I think it's hard. I don't have the silver bullet answer, so to speak, but I think the games need to continue as much as they can. And it's not ideal, though, having the likes of, let's say, Leeds, right? They've played 3 more games than the teams below them, right? At this stage of the season, it's insane. I mean, do you remember when we hadn't played Everton or Spurs last season until March or, April? It's crazy. But I do think that there needs to be some kind of medium to long-term thinking about this. Now, I don't know PCR tests, can't they be done 48 hours before? Can't that be considered rather than 24 hours before? Just little tweaks to the system or something like that to try and give just a little bit more planning if a game needs to be postponed or called off. But again, I'm not involved. I'm not part of the rule makers. I'm just one of fans that's on the receiving end of games when they get postponed, and I'm, having to turn back round. But it's difficult. It is difficult. But my view is the games need to try and continue as much as they can. What the terms of those continuations need to be, whether it needs to be a squad of 16 players rather than 14, or you have to start bringing in the youth players more. It might encourage clubs to actually have a bit more of a robust youth development program,
Yeah, Justin?
Yeah, I think it's making this debate a bigger debate. It's football's sort of imploding on itself, because they've, for so many years now, that UEFA, FIFA, Premier League, and all these different bodies have tried to shoehorn so many games in. Premier League, FA Cup, League Cup, Champions League. Let's expand the Champions League. Let's have Europa League. Now we've got the Europa League and the other, whatever the other European league is. I don't even know what it's called now. And then you've got the international games. You've got this Nations League, you've got European Championships, the World Cup. Now they're talking about World Cup every 2 years as well. So when you've got such a congested timeline of games to try and cram in anyway, you only need, nobody saw this coming, but you only need a problem like this to come along and put a spanner in the works, and it almost makes it impossible, doesn't it? So they're sort of, they've made their own bed now, and they've got to lie in it. So I'm with Kay, I think, to the best way possible, but it will impact on the integrity of the league, no question about it, because you could have, Villa playing 4 first teamers and 8 kids against a Chelsea team, like Luke said, who's got a phenomenally deep squad, and even their reserve team looks like a first team. So it's a shame, but I think we just got a lot. We did last year, and we bit the bullet last year in the FA Cup third round, and we made the decision to play a youth team and basically give up that competition just so we could get the games in. So I think other teams need to do that as well to try and get the games going, and hopefully by the end of January things will be looking up. And we can just try and get back to some kind of normality.
Yeah.
The worry we have as well is, think about January when we had our last COVID outbreak, and for me it almost seemed like a pivotal point in the season where our form and everything just seemed to sort of go on the downward trajectory. Yeah. So it's going to have a big impact on performance levels, and we can potentially see a lot of movement around the table if some teams pick up form, other teams drop form. Going to be weird, put it that way.
Definitely. Right, so let's try and talk about a game then. Chelsea. We got Chelsea on Boxing Day. Can't wait.
Hopefully.
Or have we got Chelsea on Boxing Day,
We'll find out on Christmas night.
Yeah, can't wait then. Right, let's uplift it. Chelsea, we're going to do Chelsea over, aren't we? Because at the minute they're in poor form. They got a Carabao Cup semi-final, quarter-final on Wednesday. They're in a bit of a weird situation. We all predicted, me, Ryan, Justin, that Chelsea were going to win the league this season, which a couple of weeks ago, you'd be like, yeah, dead cert. But their form recently has massively dipped. Tuchel can't really put his finger on what's happened. I think it's like Lukaku's been out as well, hasn't he? He was on fire at the start of the season. So I would say he's probably had a bit of an impact, obviously not playing. But I think if we have a pretty decent squad going into it, I think we can cause some massive problems, and I think we can get something out of the game. I think it's a real good time to play Chelsea. I think Villa Park is going to be well up for it. The atmosphere will be amazing. So I can't wait for it. But the only other thing is, it's the whole uncertainty with this episode, isn't it? Who's playing? I can't tell you who's playing. We don't know who had COVID. We don't know who was really injured because we never really heard much of it. My little vibe on who I think got COVID, I think Buendia's got COVID because I detective Luke over here. I saw him put a picture up on Instagram with a little emoji with like bandage around its head. and he was in the gym. So to me, that's sort of saying he's in the gym. I don't know why he's in the gym at home, but I think one might be Wendy. And avfc faithful have put that Mings has got COVID apparently because he wasn't in his predictive lineup, and he's been pretty adamant he knows who's got COVID. So that's a little bit of a one that we don't really know who has, who hasn't. But I think, Ramsey absolutely on fire. Gerrard waxing lyrical about him. Chukwuemeka, I think he would possibly start because I do think Ashley Young needed a bit of a rest anyway. But yeah, I think if we are pretty strong, we can pose them problems. And I think the good thing about Gerrard is it doesn't really matter who plays. We've sort of got this bit of a philosophy building, and it's bubbling away that they all buy into the way that he wants to play anyway. So I think sometimes it doesn't really matter too much on personnel because everybody's on board and will be doing what he wants them to do, basically. So I don't really think, as long as it's strong, I'm feeling all right. Justin?
Yeah, I'm confident, to be honest.
As always.
As always, yeah. I mean, I was just looking at who was missing for them against Wolves. They had Chilwell, Havertz, Hudson-Odoi, Jorginho, can't say his name, Loftus-Cheek, Lukaku, and Werner all out, and they only had 6 subs. So looking at that, I mean, if let's say it was nothing had happened and you were just playing a full strength Chelsea team, it was a full strength Villa team, you'd say it was going to be a tough game for us. So for me, I think it gives us a chance to beat them, if I'm honest, regardless of who we put out. I think, like you say, we're in a good run of form. He was chopping and changing the team anyway before COVID. He bringing players in to suit each game. So I don't think that makes a massive difference. I think most positions now, we've pretty much got 2 players in every position. Yes, there's players that you'd rather see in certain positions than others, but I think any of them that can come in can do a job. And for me, Chelsea are going to be weaker. So if we play the game, hopefully we will. So if they're weaker and we look okay, our fancy is to win it. Home game. We're all going to be chomping at the bit to get down there after what happened against Burnley. So we haven't been down there for a while. Boxing Day, everybody likes to get out, don't they, and stretch their legs and try and get out all the food out of the system. So we'll be in good voice. Sold out crowd, I presume, will be there. So yeah, I'm confident. I'm hoping we can go and really put on a good show and maybe even turn them over.
Okay, what's your vibe?
My vibe is we need to go for the jugular, seriously, because they've got a depleted squad. They're off form. Lukaku, where is he these days? I don't know if he's injured. He's got COVID. He's off form. He's dropped. I don't know what's going on with him.
It says illness on these. So the only thing you can go on this stat is there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them saying illness. The ones that were out with injury, it does say their injury. So I can only presume that the ones that say illness was the COVID ones.
Yeah. So, I mean, with that being said, I know we're going to have some people out with COVID. Like Luke said, we don't know who it's going to be. But like you said, Justin, I'm fairly confident that everyone knows the game plan. Everyone knows their role within the team. If you're starting or if you're not starting, whoever is the starting 11, they know what they need to do. Now, I don't think we should approach the game as cautiously as we did with Liverpool and Man City. I think Chelsea are depleted. They're off form. We really need to hit them where it hurts and go for the jugular, come out the blocks fast, all guns blazing. We're at home. We'll have a full house. Hopefully it doesn't get called off. The crowd are there. The only 2 players I'm concerned about are Reece James and Mason Mount. I think if we can nullify Reece James like we nullified Alexander-Arnold, I think we've got a good chance of nullifying any kind of threat that they've got. I think their last match, they only had 1 shot on target and they managed to get a goal from it. So I think that we need to score a few goals early or try, because they're really good defensively. Even though they do have this depleted squad, they're only conceding sort of 1 goal a game, that kind of thing. And we're going to have to huff and puff and try and blow their house down, as it were, to try and get something from that game. And we can't leave it until the last 20 minutes to really start going up a gear. We need to hit them really quickly, I think. And I think we could get something from that game for sure. Definitely. We're chomping at the bit, like you said, to go out there and start getting these wins under Gerrard from, playing the way that we know we can. And I think we can definitely get a win from this game, for sure.
I think the one thing that I love about Gerrard is that the first thing he wants is for the opposition to come off the pitch and know that they've been in a game with Aston Villa. And I think that's massive because, like you're saying, if that's the case on every game, then we're going to pose every single team we play massive, massive problems. And they are out of form. And they are under a bit of pressure now, Chelsea, because they can see that the gap between City and them is starting to slowly get bigger and bigger. And, you know, if that gets to, say, 7, 9, 12 points, it's done. You know, it's too much because those two teams, Liverpool and City, they're just in steamroller mode and they're just going, churning win after win. I know Liverpool drew, but yeah, I just feel, especially City, I just think I think they're going to win the league now, City. I think they're just too good. They're just too good. Justin's pulling the pace, but, you know, you've got Cancelo popping up with worldies. You've got Rodri. You've got Diaz. That, you know, these are centre-backs and full-backs pinging it top corner. No team can live with that. No team. So I do think City are going to win the league. And I think that, you know, if we go 1-0 up against Chelsea, you know, they're under massive pressure. Hannah?
Yeah, on that note, I think something instilled in me from my dad is always, whenever we're watching a game, it's first goal, got to get the first goal. And it's true. I think when we get that first goal, the confidence is just, it skyrockets. Now, I think talking about Chelsea's form, they're in a little bit of a, I don't want to say rough patch because they're picking up points, you know, but it's definitely not the Chelsea of the start of the season. They've been conceding more goals at the start of the season. One thing you knew was that Chelsea were probably going to keep a clean sheet, and now they're letting in goals. So I think we should capitalise on that, definitely. In terms of their squad, again, so uncertain. I think a lot of their cases actually came earlier last week, so they might have some returning after 10 days of isolation. But it's still not going to be full strength. We won't be either. But hopefully Gerrard is instilling in the lads that are in the changing room that you're never going to have much of a better time to get at this Chelsea team. They're slightly weakened. They're not on the best form. They're not on with highest of confidence. So just go out there and don't fear them. I feel like the first half against Liverpool and particularly Man City, we just looked like we were giving them too much respect. I think Gerrard mentioned it as well. We looked like we were going against these teams thinking, oh, they're really good, aren't they? But you can respect a team, but don't fear them. And we need to go out there and really capitalise on that and think this Chelsea team is not anything unbelievable at the minute, and we are more than capable of beating them. So I think we should be confident. Again, we will see on Sunday what the lineup's like, and I think at 4:30 a lot of us will be anxiously awaiting the Twitter posts to see the lineup. But we're going to all be there. We're going to be merry, and with the background that it might be our last game for a little while at Villa Park. I think with all of us behind them, coming back to our home after a few weeks, I think we've got to be on full steam ahead to get the 3 points.
Definitely. I thought you were going to say at 4:30 we were waiting to see whether the game was still on.
Do you know what? Wouldn't surprise me. So yeah, to keep refreshing your Twitter feed, that's all I can say. 5:15,
it's off. Get out of the stadium. Right, so go to a few thoughts then. Joe B has put team full of passion and heart, leave everything on the pitch. Definitely feel like we can give them a run for their money. When our fans are on form and the players are awesome. Noel has put, we've played well against the top teams in recent weeks. Steven Gerrard has to raise the tempo of the players for these challenges. Can we go and get 3 points? Yes, we can, Noel. And we'll go one more. Alan has put, at home against Chelsea, a team who have been underwhelming in recent weeks. We need to see this as a good chance for 3 points and not show them too much respect. Pretty much what Kay said, as we did passive against City. Looking forward to this game. and seeing how Ramsey kicks on from the Norwich game. So we'll go to our score predictions. I am going to go with a 1-1. Hannah?
I'm going for a very cagey 1-0. Early second half goal, because we seem to like those recently.
Nice. Okay.
2-0 Villa.
Love it. Justin, come on.
We've got a good home record against Chelsea the last few years, so I'm going to stick to that. It's going to be a Boxing Day bonanza at Villa Park. 2-0 the Villa.
Yes, love it. Right, so thanks for watching this episode. We just touched on how we thought at the start with COVID, because, it's just everywhere and it's just really annoying. But hopefully it doesn't affect us being in the stadium, because I think for fans, for mental health of people, it's your release, isn't it? We started this podcast at the very start of COVID. So, we know what people went through, how it can affect you. You get your release and your escapism. So hopefully that can still happen. Have a good Christmas, and we'll be back after we've beat Chelsea as well. Up the Villa.
Happy Christmas.
Villa. Merry Christmas.